Welcome back. This is where we start to look at the techniques and practice of speaking in public. In each module, we'll guide you step by step through what you need to know to be an effective speaker.
Unless we do public speaking as a hobby, we don't just do it for its own sake without an objective. So our starting point is to have a look at the purpose of your speech.
On this course, you have the option of writing and practicing a speech of your own as we progress through the modules. Whether you do it or not, it's up to you, but we certainly recommend it, and we'll give you thinking time in some of the modules. By the way, we'll call everything a speech for the moment. Even though you might be doing a presentation or a report, the principles are exactly the same.
In this video, Jasmine and I will consider the purpose of your speech and how you can use it at the starting point for your writing. We'll look at how you define your intention and outcome and what sort of speech you might write.
Now, Guy, I'm going to ask you to be the guinea pig. What sort of speech are you planning to do?
Well, I'll use my example, a speech that might be used to introduce papermaking.
Okay.
We suggest that at this stage, you might like to take the opportunity to think of something that you're interested in so that you can try it for yourself.
You can pause the video while you give it some thought, or if you prefer, just carry on watching. Guy, what is the first thing that you will do?
Well, first of all, I need to get my brief. Basically, I need to know what I'm expected to do.
Expected by whom?
Well, that depends on what sort of speaking I have to do. I might be speaking in a work situation. Maybe I'm speaking for myself because I run my own business. Or I might be tasked by my employer to speak on a particular occasion. In either case, I must make sure that I know what it is I have to do. What's the agenda? I'll either brief myself or make sure I'm briefed by my employer or by my colleagues, and I'll make sure I ask enough questions to know what is required of me, including how long I'll be expected to speak for. On the other hand, I might be speaking to an outside group or club, so I need to contact them in plenty of time to find out what they expect of me.
Yeah, that's sensible, and that's exactly what I do as well. So what would you say would be your next step?
Well, once I've got my brief, I write down my intention and what outcome I want.
And what would you say was the difference between the two?
Well, my intention is what I'm trying to say. So, for example, my speech about paper, my intention is I will inform the audience about the history and techniques of paper making and how paper is made now. I'll come back to this a little later. The outcome is centered around the audience, and it's a statement of what I want them to know or do. Once I know this, I know where I'm going and what I want to achieve. I like this statement to be a positive one. So, after my speech, the audience will know the background of how paper is manufactured. When I write and deliver my speech, this is what I'll be aiming for.
Wow, okay, now that sounds a bit complicated.
It's not actually. It takes less time to do than to describe, I promise.
So, what are you going to do next?
Well, I need to decide what sort of speech I'll need and how I'm going to approach it.
Because there are a number of different types, aren't there?
Yes. I mean, I could write a speech mainly about giving out information, or a speech calling the audience to take some action or to motivate them. Maybe I'm delivering a sales pitch or trying to provoke a discussion. Or I might be trying to persuade the audience to change their stance. And of course, I might just be entertaining the audience. Here's a closer look at these types.
That is certainly a comprehensive list. So, what's next, Guy?
Well, do you remember I wrote down my intention? Well, here it is again to remind you. What I do now is I look at my intention and underline what I think are the three main words, like this. So now I know that I'll write an informative speech about papermaking that will focus on history, techniques, and now, that is the present.
I suggest that you might like to do these steps for the speech you've chosen. Again, you can pause the video while you give it some thought, or if you prefer, just carry on watching. Guy, why did you underline just 3 points in your intention?
Well, we'll look at this in more detail in the next video, but it's because we humans, we find it easier to think in threes.
Right. Well, I look forward to hearing about that. So, are you ready to write your speech?
No, not quite yet. I need to think about how I'm going to develop my main points.
And there are a few ways of doing that, aren't there?
Yes.
Some of the ways you can develop your main points are things like a logical progression, a problem and its solution, past, present and future. Cause and effect. A review of alternatives. Simple, itemized points. A narrative. For and against. And raise some debating points. I think that's about it, isn't it, Guy?
Yes, that's pretty comprehensive. You've just about nailed it. But it soon becomes easy to pick one when you've gained experience. Let's have another look at these methods.
So now, are you ready to write that speech?
Well, yes, normally I would. But for you, our subscribers, we'll need to make you familiar with more techniques before we ask you to begin writing.
What we've looked at here are some of the essential things you need to think about before you start writing a speech. We've covered them at length, but in practice, they don't take very long to do at all. In the next video segment, Ian will host a session about what makes a speech hang together so that the audience can follow it. It's what we call speech construction. I know that you'll find it interesting and useful, so we'll see you then.